Okay, so we're going to start with the bottom part of the last part of the notes that we had from Friday, real quick. And again, what we have is not wrong. But if this is the way that you do it every single time, it could cause you problems. And so I should have had you write it a different way. Make sure you're always writing it a different way just for consistency so it doesn't get confusing later on. So when we did number 10, our remainder was -8, right? And so that's why we did minus 8. Make sense? Now, if my remainder is negative 3x plus 2, which it wasn't, if that had been the remainder, negative out and put minus right here and put 3x plus 2 on the top, would that be okay? No, right? You can't just take that negative off that first term and stick it out in front of your fraction. Right? And so because your remainder sometimes can be more than one term, if you're used to every time you see it have a negative there, you just make it minus, that causes problems. All right. If you know the difference, I mean, again, this isn't wrong, but it's probably better. What I should have made sure that you were doing was every time you have a remainder, -8, we'll make this plus and then -8. And then this was a -4, so we're going to add the remainder and just leave the negative on the 4. Does that make sense to you? That's why I wanted you to get, if you have your homework done too, and if there were negative remainders there and you just wanted to fix it real quick while you were thinking about it, that's really the way I should have made you do it. Again, it wasn't wrong, it's just that way you don't even have to think about it if you have more than one term. Okay? Everybody okay with that? We good? All right, awesome. All right, so the notes for today then, synthetic division. And I had some people ask me about this on Friday in some kind of funny ways. Like, so are we going to do that thing with the lines and like the numbers and the... Yes. All right, it's called synthetic division. It's probably what you were thinking, like, why the heck am I having to do long division when I know I can do it this way? Well, that's because synthetic division is a shortcut. Right? And then this statement right here is very important. This method only works when dividing by a binomial with a coefficient of 1. Now, if you have a binomial that doesn't have a coefficient of 1, you can force it down the road of synthetic division, but it really, that a lot of times is more trouble than it's worth. Okay? And it wouldn't work with a binomial anyway, so just knowing how to do both is good. So all of these that we're doing, we could do long division, but some of them we can do synthetic division, and we're going to look at that a little bit better. And even the ones we did on Friday, some of those could have been synthetic division, but we got to make sure we understand both because there's times for both. All right, so let's look at number 12. And we are going to divide. This question looks very much like it did on Friday, but this time we're using synthetic division. So that's the one with the the numbers and the lines. These are the lines that people were asking about. Looks something like that. Then there's a number that goes on the outside. In this case, what number would go on the outside? -4, because it's the solution to this, right? The actual x value that would go in there, which would be the -4. So -4 out here on the outside. Then there's numbers that go inside this little half box looking thing. And the top row comes from these coefficients, right? So the coefficients are 1, -1, -27, and -28. And then I would put this little box looking thing down here. What goes in there? Why am I boxing that off from the rest? What would that be? The remainder, okay? Which sometimes the remainder is 0, right? But we still talk about it having the remainder is just 0. So now I got to do something with these numbers. This is the very first thing I would do. It's been a while, right? These cobwebs off. Let me give you a little hint. The very first thing is not to multiply. The very first thing is to write it down. Then my next step, the very next step, what do I have to do before I get to multiply anything? Okay, well I have the -4 written down, but I have nothing to add yet either. This 1 right here has to come down. Right? That can just come straight down. Then we multiply, right? What am I going to multiply? -4 and 1, negative me a -4, right? And it goes right here. Then I combine these. Then I multiply that -4 times -5, which is 20. I combine those, get negative 7. Then negative 4 times negative 7 is a positive 28. And then that gives me 0. So my remainder is 0, which means when I divide these, how do I know what my answer is? Like, what are these random? They're the coefficients of my quotient, right? Since this was the x cubed term, when I divide, this is the coefficient of the x squared term. So I get x squared minus 5x minus 7. That's my quotient, my answer after I divide. Yes, much faster. So you might choose, I don't know why you would choose to do long division in a case like this, unless you have to do division on this, but you can. I mean, if you just absolutely love it, that's fine, but there's a lot less writing and junk in there, right? Only with a binomial that has a coefficient of 1. Okay. If you have a binomial that doesn't have a coefficient of 1, force it down that road, but that takes extra steps, which are usually not worth it. You can be done with the long division at that point. But yeah, if it's a trinomial or something, it doesn't work. Only when the binomial has a coefficient of 1. All right, so let's look at number 13. What goes on the outside? 2. And then in here I get 3. Oh, and this x right here should have an x cubed on it. The little cubed, it kind of went, it's underneath the word binomial up here. I don't know, it moved somehow. So we got that 3, then the negative 22, positive 37, and negative 10. Okay. All right, so you work through that without me talking you through it, and don't look up here until you're done. Make sure you understand the steps. Okay. Everybody good? Yes? We're good on this? Any questions? Just knocking some cobwebs off? All right. So let's do 14. I've got, what goes on the outside here? Negative 5. And then it gives me 1, 1, negative 22, negative 1, and I box off my remainder. So my 1 comes down. Negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. Combine those, get negative 4. Negative 5 times negative 4 is a positive 20. It's a negative 2. So give me a positive 10. So now I have a 9 in there, right? I have a remainder. My answer then, this was x cubed, so this gives me x squared. So x squared minus 4x minus 2. And then we're going to add a remainder regardless. And this is 9, so is it just plus 9? No, plus 9 over what? X plus 5. Okay. We all good on that? Yes? Okay, good. Then you do 15. Ask me questions if you got them. No questions? We're all good, right? Piece of cake? All right. Good. Then let's look at missing powers, because this really isn't that complicated. It might seem a little weird if you had never seen it before, but the mistakes that happen besides sign errors and just general brain farts or just messing up the missing powers. Starting to get stuff, just know whatever you have is not right. You probably need to check to see if you have got some powers that handle correctly, because when I have this, okay, what goes on the outside is negative 8, right? And then I have an x cubed term. I do not have an x squared term. So technically, my x squared term that's missing is 0x squared, right? So I get zeroed out because the coefficient is 0. I would never write it in my polynomial itself, but it's got to go in my long division and my synthetic division. So my first coefficient is 1, then I have a 0, then negative 49, and then 120. You have to have those placeholders there. Okay. So then bring down my 1. This gives me negative 8. Well, 0 and negative 8 is negative 8. Negative 8 times negative 8 is 64. And then negative 49 and 15. And then negative 8 times 15 is negative 120. Good. Which means my remainder is 0. So my answer then is x squared minus 8x plus 15. Good? Questions? Alrighty. Then 17. You agree with me so far? Yeah, the zeros make you think maybe I'm doing something wrong, right? Sometimes. But I get x cubed, and there's nothing else that's going on in my polynomial itself. But then remember, I'm going to add my remainder no matter what. And then the remainder would look like what? Negative 1 over x minus 9. Okay, everybody good with that? Yes, right? Awesome. All right, so this says, how can division be used to factor polynomials? Suppose you are given a polynomial function and one of its linear factors. You can completely factor the polynomial by dividing the function by its known factor. So this says, use division to write this function in factored form if x minus 4 is a factor. Then determine the zeros of the function. All right, so we can divide. Do you want to use synthetic division or long division? Synthetic, because we can, right? Now, when we do that, what do you expect the remainder to be here? 0, because it's a factor, right? It's a factor, I'm not going to have a remainder. So if you do it and you get a remainder, something went wrong somewhere, right? So that's kind of how you know to check yourself as well. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's see, 4 goes on the outside. Then inside we have 1, 2, and 8. Okay, so bring my 1 down. This is 4, negative 1, negative 4, negative 2, negative 8, and I do get 0, which is good, right? So then here's what I know. I know that f of x originally was x cubed minus 5x squared plus 2x plus 8, right? So now they told me one of the factors is x minus 4. So f of x is equal to x minus 4. And then once that gets factored out, how do I know what the rest of it is? Our quotient, right? Which would be x squared minus x minus 2, right? Everybody know where I got that from? Yes, okay. So I could do long division again if I knew synthetic division again if I knew what the factor was, but I don't. But can I get this in a better form? What can I do here? Factor it, right? Factoring is sometimes faster and easier. So f of x is equal to x minus 4. And then when I factor this, it's going to factor into 2 binomials. Remember, understanding your signs can help you greatly. This is negative, which means signs are opposite. One of them is positive, one of them is negative. This is negative, so the other one's negative. So what are your numbers multiplied to give you 2? 1 and 2. Yeah, it's really hard. 2 and 1. There we go. So then I have it fully factored. So it said write it in factored form. There's factored form. Then it says determine the zeros of the function. What form do I write the answer? Set. Okay, good. What's my smallest one? -1, and then 2, and then 4. And then the factored form and the zeros are my answer. Okay, everybody okay with that? Any questions? Awesome. So now it says, given the polynomial function and one of its factors, use long division or synthetic division, so you get to choose, to write the polynomial in factored form, then give the zeros of the function. All right, so what would we choose here? Long division or synthetic? Synthetic. Yep, that sounds good to me. And this is a cube, so I have a 1, and then what? 0, and then -37, and then -84. So bring down a 1, it's going to be 7, 7, 49, 12. What's 7 times 12? 84. That is 0. Right? So that means that f of x now is x minus 7 times x squared plus 7x plus 12. Then I can factor this. My signs are, this is positive, the signs are the same. This is positive, so they're both positive. What are my two numbers? 4 and 3. Okay, and my pen is okay. So 4 and 3. So then my zeros, what's my smallest one? -4, then -3, then 7. Okay. Everybody good? Any questions at all? All right, then you do number 19. If you need more room to factor, you can do that over here in this blank space if you need to. Okay, so as you go through to factor this, when you get here and A is not 1, then there's lots of different ways you can factor. Grouping is what a lot of you do. But back in my day, there wasn't no grouping or fancy boxes or anything like that. Like, you just had to understand the numbers, and basically it was guess and check all day long, and you darn well better know your multiplication facts and how numbers are related, or you're going to be there for a while. And you really should get to a point where, and hopefully some of you are there and have been there for a while, but when your A is not 1, if it's at least if it's a prime number, then you just jumping to this step and being able to reason through your factors should not be that big of a deal for you. If it's not a prime number, let's say it was 6, then this could be 6 and 1, or this could be 2 and 3, that sort of thing. Then you have more to go through. But even then, you should be able to reason through the process. So if you still need to do grouping, doing it. I'm not saying you have to have shortcuts to everything, but the quicker you are at factoring, the better off you're going to be. So I know numbers that go in here, the signs have to be different. They have to multiply to give me 5. My only options are what? 1 and 5, would you agree? Only numbers are going to multiply and give me 5, right? So I got to decide which one goes where and what the sign's going to be. Well, I have to have a negative 9 here. Well, 2 times 5 is 10, right? So I put my 5 here. When I do 2x 5, I get 10, and make this 1. I can subtract the 1 out, but I want this to be negative, so the 5 has to be negative, and this has to be positive. Yeah, you can reason through that without doing grouping or going through a process. It's just understanding what's happening here. And if you don't know how to foil things back together, then you can't think through that process. But that should be, become quicker and quicker for you as you go. All right, so when we get all that done then, my zeros, what's the smallest one? Negative 3, and then negative 1/2, and then 5. And I think we're also past the point where we actually literally have to write down 2x plus 1 equals 0 and solve it. Like, you should look at it and be able to know what your x values are. Okay, good. Any questions at all? We good? All right, let's look at number 20. Can I do synthetic division here? No. I could kind of force it down that road. It would not be real pretty. I would not suggest that. But I can divide. I'm just going to have to use long division, right? So if I have 2x plus 5, and I'm going to divide this into x cubed plus x squared minus 27x plus 20. All right, so at the end of the day on Friday, I can usually tell, even when you don't ask questions, that when you look at me crazy, either you're really confused or you hate me or both. I don't know. But so I'm always like, what's going on? And so finally somebody said, well, like, I get it, but I learned it a little differently. So I'm thinking, how in the world do you do it differently? I said, okay, so tell me, what did you do different than what we're doing here? She said, well, and it was a different question, but it said basically, well, when we did this first term, so like wrote it out here, like 6x cubed, we would divide by 2x, and then that leaves us with 3x squared. And then we put 3x squared on the top up here, right? And then we write down 3x squared, and we multiply it by 2x plus 5, and then that's what goes down here, or whatever. Well, basically, that's kind of just showing you why you're doing what you're doing, but what I'm doing is the same thing. I just wanted to, of course, the last that I did this is that understand that what I was just wasn't writing it out down up there. If you want to write it down, you can write it down. I don't know what you would want to, but you can. It's a whole lot more writing. Explain to you why you're doing it. If I take 6x cubed and I divide it by 2x and I get that 3x squared, that's what goes right here, right? And then when we multiply it back, 3x squared times 2x and get 6x cubed, and 3x times 5, we get plus 15x squared, right? That's just like distributing this in here, right? It's just not writing it out to the side. Then I would imagine you were also told to do this, because officially that's what's happening too, right? However, doing that, if you don't distribute that negative, then that's going to cause you some problems. So I would suggest from the very beginning to not even worry about the parentheses. I mean, you need to understand that that's what's happening, but to just go through and change your signs. That's why I showed you that. Okay. So this zeroes out. This gives me negative 14x squared, and I bring down my negative 27x. And 2x divided into negative 14x squared, and I get my negative 7x. So negative 14x squared minus 35x. Change my signs. These zero out. This gives me 8x plus 20. So 2x into 8x, that would be a positive 4. Gives me 8x plus 20. Change my signs there. And it zeroes out just like we would expect, right? So then I've got to write down what I've got. Well, at this point now I have f of x is equal to, well, that 2x. Good. 3x squared minus 7x plus 4. Then I have to factor. So this is going to be 3x and x. The signs are the same, and they're both negative. So minus. Four goes first or second? First, and then 1. So my zeros then, my smallest one is going to be negative 5/2, and then 1, and then negative 4. Not negative, I'm sorry, then just 4/3. Making stuff up again. Everybody okay? All right, then you work on the last one. Agree with me so far? Now here, you pretty much have to do grouping. And whether or not you do the extra steps for it or not is up to you, but you don't have to. When I factor from these first two terms here, I factor out the x squared, and then two terms factor out negative 4. Okay, so then what I'm left with in here would be plus 3, and that's what I would be left with here. That's what I would expect. And then have it factored by grouping. And I have to actually go and do stuff. Oh, but wait, there's more, right? I can keep going? Okay. So then I've got f of x equals x minus 1. And then this is the difference of squares. So x plus 2 times x minus 2. And then 2x plus 3. Now that it is factored all the way, my zeros, what's my smallest one? Negative 2. And then negative 3/2, and then 1, and then what? 2. Now I can list 2 again, but what we want to get in the habit of doing is, condensing some of this. I can change this to plus or minus 2, and then I have it like this. Because when you have a ton of options, and some of them are plus or minuses, it'll condense however much you have to write. Any questions? All right, grab the homework. Let's look at the homework. The directions. At the top, say, using long division or synthetic division, or use long division or synthetic division to factor each polynomial completely with the given factor, then give zeros of functions. You get to decide if it's going to be synthetic division or long division. And then starting with number 5, it says, divide using long division or synthetic division. Does it say anything about factoring and finding zeros? No, it does not. So read the directions. Always read the directions and pay attention to the directions so you know you're doing the right things. Okay? Any questions at all? All right, go ahead and get your notes glued in so you're not waiting until the last minute to do that.